What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto has a cursed sword? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. A young blonde whiskered child traversed through the dense fog surrounding this willowy forest. The young man was bruised and beaten, his clothes were covered in dirt and blood. It had been months since he was last home, he had been on the run for a long time now. The bounty on his huge was huge, and it was because of that he couldn't trust many people. The young man was named Naruto. Said boy cursed his luck. It wasn't that long ago that things had been looking up for the blonde, but in a matter of days his entire life was practically ruined. The Godem Hokage was not a man on Naruto's good books, he was responsible for turning the young boy's life upside down. Had Tsunade been chosen as the Godem Hokage, things would never have turned out this way. After retrieving Tsunade from Tanzaku-gai, she was chosen as a major candidate for the Hokage position, but her opponent was a man known as Danzo Shimura. The council voted in favor of Danzo Shimura. Tsunade's long absence from Konoha, her excessive drinking, and her addiction to gambling were the only blemishes on her amazing repertoire. But they were still enough to sway the vote in Danzo's favor. Not that long after Danzo's appointment as Hokage, Sasuke had left the village to join Orochimaru. Danzo had sent Naruto along with Neji, Kiba, Shikamaru and Choji to capture Sasuke. Naruto knew he couldn't afford to lose this battle, the life of his best friend was on the line, and he made a promise of a lifetime to the girl he loved that he would return Sasuke to Konoha. In the end, Naruto met Sasuke in the Valley of the End, and after a long hard-fought battle Naruto was the victor. Though it wasn't much of a victory since the fight itself nearly killed Naruto, had it not been for the Kyuubi's power he would have died from the wounds he had sustained from Sasuke. Naruto was brought back to Konoha by Kakashi himself, and while he was resting in the hospital one day he was immediately arrested by the Hokage. He was placed on charges of assault and attempted murder on the Uchiha. He was of course found guilty, and as punishment he was to be placed en route and stripped of personality and free thinking by Danzo. He was being prepared to be the ultimate human weapon, but the day before Naruto was forcibly inducted into root, Jiraiya and Tsunade came to his rescue. They broke him out of his cell, and they supplied him with a bag full of supplies. During the escape Danzo was made aware, and so he sent Root after them. Jiraiya and Tsunade could both sense the incoming threats, so they decided to stay behind to fend them off and buy time for Naruto. Since then Naruto hadn't known the fate of the two Sannin. But despite whatever happened to them, the blonde was forever thankful for their sacrifice. The following day when Naruto escaped from Root, he checked the supplies given to him in the bag. The first thing he noticed was a scroll. He decided to open the scroll first, and he saw directions from Jiraiya. It instructed Naruto to meet with Jiraiya's spy network. They would help him hide from the people chasing him down. Naruto followed the map that came with the scroll and headed to meet with Jiraiya's spy network one by one. Each of them helped Naruto. All of them had been notified of this from Jiraiya since before the prison breakout of Naruto. They housed Naruto for a week, some for days, they fed him, and they helped him go from one place to the next. But Naruto had his eyes set on one place. His goal was to reach Kirigakure. It was a dangerous place since it was in the middle of a bloody civil war. But nonetheless he knew this was the best place for him to hide since no one would dare attack the Revolutionary Army. With the help of Jiraiya's spy network they were able to slowly but surely smuggle Naruto into Kirigakure. Those months were long and arduous for Naruto, but they were a thing of the past. Now all Naruto had to do was find the Kiri rebel base and possibly join them, then he'll be able to find a home. But things were finally looking bright for the orange-clad boy. He began to hear voices grow louder in the distance the closer he walked. Maybe he finally reached the encampment. He walked as quick as he could to the voices, and eventually the fog began to thin out. Once past the fog Naruto looked around and found that he was by the encampment he was looking for. The revolutionary flags were waving, there was many camps around the area, and many intimidating ninjas walking around the place. A few noticed the arrival of Naruto and they decided to walk over to him just in case. He may look innocent and young, but for all they knew he could be a spy. The Mizukage Yagura was known to be a sneaky and relentless leader, so they had to take all precautions to make sure their organization wasn't going to be compromised. "Hey kid, what are you doing here? What do you want?" asked one of the men as he glared at Naruto. "I need to speak to Zabuza," he replied. The two men glanced and nodded at each other before turning back to Naruto. "We'll take you to Zabuza-sama, but we'll have to handcuff you just in case for precaution," one said. Naruto nodded, allowing them to handcuff him. The two led Naruto to a largest tent in the encampment. Inside the tent gathered 5 people huddled around a table which displayed a large map of the land of water. Naruto quickly scanned the room and his eyes immediately met with the one familiar face. It was none other than Zabuza, the first true enemy he encountered as a Konoha ninja. The battle at the bridge was a turning point in Team 7's ninja lives. It was then they realized the reality of shinobis. Team 7 was quite close to killing Zabuza during their mission in Wave. But just before Kakashi was able to land a killing blow to Zabuza, Gato had arrived with a large militia of hired mercenaries. He sent them to kill everyone in the bridge. Of course, this angered both Zabuza and Haku. The two rogue mist ninjas then changed their targets from Team 7 to Gato. With the rich man's evident betrayal, it meant there was no longer any reason for them to keep fighting Team 7. The demon of a man, and the ice user Haku managed to cut down and kill Gato and all his mine in a matter of minutes. After that entire fiasco, Team 7 parted in good terms with Zabuza and Haku. The two mentioned something about rejoining the rebellion effort, and this was what brought Naruto all the way to Kiri. With Konoha betraying him, he had no home to go to, and no matter where he went, he had a large target in his back. Many of Jiraiya's spies noted that Kirigakure would be Naruto's best bet to be able to stay away from both Konoha ninjas and the Akatsuki. Joining the rebellion would be dangerous, but at least he would be far away from his old home, and here he had a chance of cultivating his skills as a ninja. He placed himself in a position where it was to kill or be killed, but it wasn't all bad. After hearing of the stories about the Kiri's reputation for being the Bloody Mist, he knew that by going here to join the rebellion he would also be doing a service to people. He wasn't the type of person who could turn a blind eye to injustice, and so after months of traveling and hiding, he made his way to the last place he'd ever expected to end up in, the Kiri Revolutionary Army encampment. "Is that you, Naruto? What the hell are you doing here, brat?" asked Zabuza before turning to the two revolutionary soldiers accompanying Naruto. "You two are dismissed. Can you unlock his shackles? He won't bite. He's an old friend of mine." The two soldiers nodded and undid Naruto's restraints before bowing to the 5 ninjas and leaving the camp. Naruto felt a lot comfier and at ease without those handcuffs. Zabuza-san, I hate to interrupt, but who is this child?" asked one of the ninjas. "He's the kid from the Land of Waves, the one I told you all about. Don't worry everyone, we can trust this kid. I can personally vouch for the brat," he replied. Naruto smiled brightly at the others, forgetting that there were others present. "Hey, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. It's a pleasure meeting you guys," he said. A middle-aged man with spiky blue hair and an eye patch on his left eye nodded at the child. "Greetings. My name is Ao. I serve as the advisor for Mei-sama," he replied in a curt manner. He wasn't sure about this child. He noticed the obvious Konoha Hite on his forehead, and despite Zabuza's connection to him, he wasn't going to immediately take the man's word on it. A large chunky man with 3 blue stripes adorning his round face spoke next. "Well, if we're having introductions, then I guess it's my turn. My name is Chukichi. I run the spy network and assassination department of our little operation," he said. After Chukichi's brief introduction, a tall, slender and feminine-looking man walked over to Naruto to shake his hand. The man had pale golden eyes and brown hair that reached down to his shoulders. "My name is Yu Takata. I serve as the frontline commander of our. Is nice to meet you, Naruto Uzumaki." Finally, Naruto's eyes landed on the sole woman in the tent. She was a tall, busty and beautiful auburn-haired woman. She had stunning green eyes which reminded Naruto of his crush back in Konoha, and her red hair reached down to her ankles. The young blonde was entranced as he noticed the young woman staring and smirking straight at him. It left him blushing and unable to maintain eye contact with the lady. But from what he saw, she didn't seem that much older than him. She seemed to be in her teens. If Naruto had to guess, she was probably just 3 years older than he was. A stark contrast to the other people in the camp, who all seemed to be seasoned and experienced ninjas. The woman strutted over to Naruto before leaning down to give him a small kiss on the cheek. "You're cute. The name's Mai Terumi. I'm the leader of this rebellion." "It's so nice meeting you, Naruto-kun," she whispered in his ear in a sultry tone as Naruto shivered in delight. Naruto then turned to Zabuza. "So what do you do then?" he asked. "I serve as the military strategist and drill sergeant." "Well, with introductions out of the way, I feel like you owe us an explanation, Naruto." "Not that I'm complaining or anything, but what are you, a Konoha ninja, doing all the way here?" asked Zabuza. Zabuza was right, they deserved an explanation. Naruto told them the events that occurred over the past few months to varying degrees of shock. Zabuza was of course livid. He had grown to like the young man despite once being enemies, and it was a shame as to how Konoha was so willing to discard him. "That's pretty much the entire story, and here I am right now," finished Naruto. "I see, I'm sorry about what happened to you, Naruto-kun. But it doesn't answer the big question, why are you here?" asked Mei. Naruto sighed. He caught the attention of the entire tent when he bowed down in respect. Zabuza didn't know Naruto all too well, but he knew enough to know that Naruto wasn't the type of person to bow down to anyone, and to see the boy in this state surprised him greatly. "I wish to join the Revolutionary Army," declared the blonde, shocking the five ninjas. "You an outsider? Why would you want to help our cause?" "It has nothing to do with you," asked the skeptical Ao. "I know it seems shady with me being a former Konoha ninja, but I am serious. I want to help because I know it's the right thing to do," replied the blonde. Zabuza then voiced his own opinion. "I can vouch for the brat. I believe him," he said as Naruto smiled thankfully at him. Ao scowled in response. "If you vouch for him, you can have the responsibility of dealing with him," he replied. "I'll gladly take that responsibility. I know for a fact that this kid can help our forces," replied the man. Naruto smiled in appreciation towards Zabuza. Mei then eyed the two before speaking. "I see no problem in allowing Naruto-kun to join our ranks, but we have to know for sure what he's capable of. The risks of joining the rebellion are incredibly high. There's a reason why most of the troops we've recruited are seasoned shinobi," she said. "I know for a fact that Naruto can fight. For Kami's sake he managed to defeat Haku," replied Zabuza. That does sound promising," Utakata added on before facing the young blonde. "Now Naruto, could you please explain your skills and weaknesses as a ninja? We want to evaluate your skills so we know what kind of role you can have in our ranks." Naruto nodded in understanding. "Hi Utakata-san. I'm pretty confident with my chakra levels, but my control isn't the best from what I've been told. Because of the amount of chakra I have, it is impossible for me to use genjutsu. I also don't know too many jutsus either, but the ones I do can keep me alive," he explained. "I find it hard to believe that a child such as yourself can hold as much chakra as you claim," Ao mentioned skeptically. "Well, I can," Naruto replied abruptly. "Don't mind him, Naruto-kun. Ao-san has always been an unbelieving fellow," interjected Mei. "Now what kind of jutsus are you capable of, Naruto-kun?" "I can only really do 3 jutsus," he said, causing Ao to scoff in an unimpressed tone. "I can create shadow clones with ease. I can do an A-rank Konoha technique called the Rasengan. And I can also summon toads." The techniques mentioned by Naruto sparked a sudden interest among the council. 2 of the jutsus Naruto mentioned were synonymous with the Yondaime, and it was hard to believe a child such as Naruto would be able to use those techniques himself. Ao was the only remaining member of the council unimpressed. He just couldn't fully believe what the kid said without seeing it for his own eyes. "If you claim to be able to do such jutsus, then surely you can show us?" Naruto nodded and summoned a single shadow clone. Together the 2 of them formed the Rasengan on one of his hands, much to the shock of the Kiri ninjas. "Well, I'll be damned, the brat actually did it," muttered Ao. "Well, I guess he doesn't have anything else to prove then, Ao," said Zabuza. "HMPH, I guess not, but just remember, Zabuza, he'll be your responsibility," warned the man. "Don't worry, I intend to look after the brat myself. I owe him one." "Actually, there is one other thing I need to tell you guys about myself," Naruto interjected, gaining the attention of all the ninjas. "Oh, and what would that be, Naruto-kun?" Mei asked curiously. Naruto sighed nervously in front of these ninja. "The truth is I am also a Jinchuriki," he claimed, shocking every single individual in the tent. A tense silence surrounded them. All eyes were directly on Naruto after this bold statement. Naruto then noticed a hushed discussion among the elder ninjas. He tried to listen in, but they did well to keep their voices low and quiet. A few minutes of soft discussion ensued. To Naruto it felt like hours. All of them were staring at him and talking about him among themselves. This unnerved the young man, making him slightly nervous. "Tell us, Naruto, what beast do you hold within you?" Zabuza questioned. The young blonde was brought out of his trance. Well, you see, I hold the Kyuubi," he answered. Mei gasped in shock, while the others studied Naruto and his form. "This could be useful for us," exclaimed Ao. "We all know that Yagura is also a Jinchuriki himself." "That's true, Yagura holds the Sanbi, but now we can use the Kyuubi against him. This will increase our chances significantly. He can be the weapon that wins us this war," muttered Chukichi. That final statement greatly annoyed Naruto. "I'm not a weapon," he declared passionately as the attention of the ninjas was placed back on the boy. "I have no intentions on using the Kyuubi or his powers. I've seen what it can do, and it is dangerous. I want to help you with my own merit. I can fight for myself. I am a ninja, not a mindless weapon." Mei decided it was best to apologize to Naruto for their conduct. "Forgive us, Naruto-kun, we didn't mean to speak of you as such. We are in a difficult position and news such as this can tip the scales in our favor," she explained to the boy. "Before any of that, if what you say is true, then you have the potential to hold an incredible amount of power. If used and harnessed correctly, you may be able to single-handedly win us the war," argued Ao. "But what proof do we have that what you say is true?" Naruto glared at the blue-haired man before lifting his shirt to show the seal placed on his stomach. "This is the seal that holds the Kyuubi within me," he replied. Utakata couldn't take his eyes off the seal. He knew then and there that the boy wasn't lying. "I believe Naruto. During our battle at the bridge, he unleashed a powerful and evil chakra that had an incredible amount of killer intent. I was rooted to the spot, and it was with that power he managed to defeat Haku," explained Zabuza. "If so, then all the more reason we allow him to join us. The Kyuubi's powers can easily overwhelm the powers of the Sanbi," said Chukichi. Naruto clenched his fists in frustration. "I said it already, I am not a mindless weapon. You guys don't know what the Kyuubi's chakra is capable of. I am fully aware. I do not want to rely on it, it is far too dangerous," he yelled. "I agree with Naruto, as the Jinchuriki he would surely know best. I am confident that his skills as a shinobi alone are valuable enough, and if he feels as though the Kyuubi's powers shouldn't be used, then I for one am inclined to agree." The young blonde nodded gratefully towards Zabuza for standing up for him. Right after that, Utakata too spoke up. "I too agree with Naruto-san. I can understand his position," he said to his colleagues before turning to face the young blonde. "Naruto-san, I too am a Jinchuriki and I sympathize with you. I hold the Rokubi and I found it difficult at first to control his powers. I can only imagine how much harder it is to hold the Kyuubis. I commend you for your strength." Naruto was surprised to find himself with yet another Jinchuriki. First it was Gaara and now there was this man Utakata before him. "Arigato Utakata-san," he replied. "Well, you all already know where I stand," replied Ao. "Same goes for me," Chukichi added. "Then that leaves me, I guess," Mei sighed. "I understand the concerns of both parties, but I agree with Naruto-kun. He would best know the powers of the Kyuubi, and if he deems it too dangerous to use, then I must go by his word. Besides, if Zabuza-san is already willing to vouch for Naruto-kun's skills as a shinobi, then I can't see a reason as to why that wouldn't be enough to recruit him." Naruto smiled before nodding thankfully at the auburn-haired Kunoichi. "Well, I guess that settles that," exclaimed Zabuza. "Welcome to our forces, Naruto." The young blonde smiled before bowing respectfully in front of the five. "Arigato, you won't regret this decision. I know I may not be from Kirigakure, but I will fight for it the same way I once fought for Konoha," he answered sincerely. Mei chuckled softly. My, what a promising recruit we have," she said. "Now is there anything else you four want to tell him before I give him the tour?" asked Zabuza. "Hi Zabuza-san, as you already know, you will be responsible for the kid. But I also ask if Utakata could also help watch over him as a fellow Jinchuriki. If he doesn't want to use the fox's powers, at least let Utakata help him control and subside the Kyuubi's influence," said Ao. "Very well, I must agree to that," said Mei, as all the others agreed to it as well. "Well, if that's all, then the two of us will be on our way." Zabuza walked out of the tent with Naruto in tow. The two explored the areas of the large encampment as Zabuza showed him to the infirmary tents, the kitchen tents, the sleeping areas, the latrines and other facilities around the encampment. Near the end of the tour they only had two final areas left to go, the weaponry and the training grounds. Zabuza decided to show Naruto the former first. The two entered a large tent within the camp. Once inside, Naruto's eyes couldn't help but widen at the sight of so many weapons. There were kunai, shuriken, swords, axes, explosive tags, and many other forms of weaponry. Here Naruto is where you go in the encampment to stock up on supplies. But make sure not to be wasteful. I know that we have a lot of weapons stocked up, but procuring them can be difficult at times, so remember to try your best to hold on to them, he explained. Naruto nodded as he continued to scan the area, but then his eyes landed on the very end of the tent, and there stood 3 unique blades placed in a safe display. Naruto was able to recognize 2 of the swords. It was the large blade that Zabuza once held, and the other were the twin swords of Raiga Kurisuke, another member of the 7 swordsmen that Naruto and his team defeated when he was still loyal to Konoha. If Naruto remembered correctly, Zabuza's sword was named Kabikira Bocho and Raiga's was named Kiba. "Hey Zabuza-san, why's your blade over there? Don't you always carry it around with you?" asked Naruto, "and what's with that other blade next to it? It looks badass." "Unfortunately, during our battle at the Land of Waves I sustained heavy injuries. I barely survived the onslaught of Gato and his men, but when you and your team nursed Haku and I back to health, Haku was able to recover well, but I lost a lot of mobility and strength in my arms. Wielding the blades are extremely difficult and taxing, and no one has proven themselves worthy yet, so for now those blades are retired in the armory," he explained. "Ah, I see, I'm really sorry with how things turned out," replied Naruto. "You have nothing to apologize for. In fact, if it wasn't for you and your team, Haku and I may no longer be walking this earth. So, if anything, you have my thanks, Gaki," he said. Naruto smiled up at the man. "I never pegged you for a softie, Zabuza," he said. Zabuza bonked Naruto on the head, eliciting a pained hiss from the blonde. "Don't push your luck, brat," he warned. The young blonde rubbed the top of his head, nursing the lump before turning his attention back to the other 2 swords. "What's up with Raiga's swords? How'd they get here? And what's with that last sword over there?" he asked. "Well, when news spread about Raiga's death at the hands of you and your team, we immediately sent out a skilled unit to recover the swords. We made sure to reach it before the Mizukage's forces could. Let me say this, kid, you certainly have a knack for defeating members of the 7 swordsmen." Naruto blushed at the praise. "Yeah, well, I have good teammates, that's all," he said. As for the third and final sword, that is the Haramekure, it once belonged to one of best warriors in the rebellion, Mangetsu Hazuka. A few years ago, he was ambushed and killed by the Mizukage's best forces. We couldn't save him, but at least we recovered the sword before they could. Though the loss of Mangetsu left us severely weakened. "Man, these swords must really be important for you guys to fight over them," muttered the blonde. "They really are, Naruto. The 7 swords are all legendary swords, each with a unique power, making it extremely powerful. If placed in the right hands, they could shift the tides of war. That's why there's currently a large power struggle for possession of all 7 swords. Now we have 3 of the 7, leaving 4 more out there. I for one believe that the swords are our key towards winning this war, and so we are putting a lot of our efforts into gathering all 7 of the swords." "4 more? Do you know where they are right now?" asked the boy as Zabuza nodded. "From the remaining 4, 3 are currently in the possession of Yagura and his forces. Among the previous generation of the 7 swords, 3 of them remained loyal to the Mizukage. 2 of them turned rogue, while Mangetsu and I joined the side of the rebels. The 3 loyal to the Mizukage are Kushimaru Kurarare, he wields the Nuabari, Jinin Akabino, he wields the Kabutowari, and finally there's Jinpachi Munashi, he wields the Shibuki," he answered. "Who were the 2 that went rogue then?" "One was Raiga, but since he had been killed, he is no longer a factor. Personally, I would like to thank you for that. Raiga was causing too much trouble for our liking, and it was because of his death we claimed the Kiba, putting us in even grounds with the Mizukage. Ah, it was no problem at all. I couldn't let Raiga continue doing what he pleased. Then there's the wielder of the Samahata. He is by far the most powerful of us all. He was second only to the Mizukage himself in terms of power. His name is Kisame Hoshigaki." Naruto's eyes widened. That name sounds familiar. Is he that real tall shark-looking guy? Carries around this bandaged-up sword or something? Asked Naruto. "Yeah, that's him. How do you know him?" asked Zabuza. "I fought him once," replied Naruto. "I was almost done for before my sensei came to my rescue." "You fought Kisame? It's amazing that you're still alive. Yeah, no kidding, that guy was dangerous, replied Naruto. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. What's going on with these swords then? Wouldn't it be a waste not to use them against the Mizukage? Yes, but it would be more of a waste to hand them to someone not ready only for them to get killed. If that were to happen and Yaguro reclaims any of those swords, that will put us at a severe disadvantage, since I'm certain there's people in his ranks who can wield the swords. Man, that sucks then. Surely there's someone around here who can use those swords? Unfortunately, not at this moment in time, but we have some recruits around your age showing extreme promise. Typically, we refrain from recruiting teenagers into our ranks, but desperate times call for desperate measures. We don't have many, but we have a few soldiers your age. The only reason they were accepted was because they showed aptitude advanced for their ages, and each of them showing incredible amounts of potential. I guess that's just something war will do to you. It forces you to grow up quickly, he said. Ah, I see, that's a shame, said Naruto, but I guess there's no other way. No, there's not. Now come on, I'll bring you over to the training grounds. There I'll introduce you to the rest of the kids your age. We train them to the bone to prepare them for things to come. Starting tomorrow you'll be joining those kids in action. Hi, you can count on me, Zabuza. Training grounds. Naruto followed Zabuza through this thick mist as they traversed through this maze of a forest. Eventually the two found their way towards a large lake and a shoreline. There Naruto was amazed to see all these other teenage shinobi training around the water. Upon the arrival of Zabuza, all ceased their actions and lined up in front of the man. Naruto eyed all 6 of them, all of them young, but despite their age they exuded a certain level of power advanced for their age. This heavily impressed Naruto, and he hoped to be of use to them, seeing as how they would be his new comrades. His eyes then landed on one familiar figure. On the very end of the line was Haku. Naruto nodded towards her and she nodded back with a faint smile on her face. Attention everyone, I have another new recruit who will be joining us starting tomorrow, said Zabuza as he pointed towards the whiskered teen by his side. This is Naruto Uzumaki, and from this day forth he will be your comrade in arms. Please introduce each of yourselves to him. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Naruto-san. My name is Jugo. If you are ever in need of any assistance, make sure to let me know. I'll be more than happy to help a recruit such as yourself out. Naruto could tell just how kind-natured this guy was just by the tone of his voice. The young man known as Jugo was tall and muscular. Physically he was the most advanced out of all of them, and his bright and spiky orange hair added a few more inches towards his overall height. Next to speak up was a lean young man of average height. He had shark-like teeth similar to Zabuza's and straight white hair to go with it. The name Suigetsu Hazuka. I don't know you, but if Zabuza-senpai vouches for you I'm sure you can't be too bad, he said with a smug grin. A slender and fair-skinned girl spoke next. Naruto eyed her and noticed that she had wavy blonde hair and dark green eyes. Nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. My name is Hotaru. I look forward to working with you, she said. Up next was another tall teenager. He had a fair complexion and messy gray hair. What immediately caught Naruto's attention was the bloodlust seen in his eyes. It somewhat reminded him of the Teme. Kagura Karatachi, he said as he stared straight at Naruto, unnerving him slightly. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto. A short and meek-looking kid spoke next. He wore glasses and his teeth also resembled Suigetsu and Zabuza's. He had messy blue hair and he spoke, or stuttered, in a very soft tone. Hello, I'm Chojuro. Nice to meet you, Naruto-san, he nervously stuttered. Then there was the final person. Naruto knew her by now and he greeted her with a smile. It's good to see you again, Haku, he said as Haku nodded in return. Likewise, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned his attention to the other 5 before nodding to them as well. Yash, it's nice to meet you all. I look forward to working with all of you, he said. I'll let you know now, Naruto, since I can no longer wield my sword, I act as a sensei for the new recruits now, and from this day forth I'll be training you as well as these brats. So, get ready for the training from hell, he warned in a menacing tone. With Itachi, the infamous Uchiha assassin, trekked down a beaten old path in the middle of nowhere. By his side walked his Akatsuki partner Kisame Hoshigaki. The two journeyed in relative silence. Itachi was never one to talk when it was unnecessary. News of Naruto's fight with Sasuke and subsequent banishment immediately spread amongst the Akatsuki ranks. Of course it was to be expected with a spy such as Zetsu. Itachi was obviously privy to the knowledge, and as such it left him with a sense of inner turmoil. Itachi's time in Konoha as a member of Anbu had him look after Naruto when he was just a boy, and he had grown to like the young man, seeing him as a sort of second younger brother. Of course, Naruto never knew his real-life identity, probably for the best since he was playing as an Akatsuki double agent. "It pains me to see you suffer for the foolishness of my younger brother Naruto-kun," he thought to himself, "but for your actions you have my eternal thanks. My brother might be a fool, but he was lucky to have a friend such as yourself." Itachi continued to walk through the old path. It was times like these that gave Itachi time to think. Things weren't looking good for Konoha. Danzo was the new Hokage, Jiraiya and Tsunade were imprisoned in the tightest prison in Konoha for their assistance in Naruto's escape, and Sasuke was now apparently taken in as Danzo's protege. All of which grew to anger the usually calm and composed Itachi. But just as his inner anger began to rise, a small crow summon briefly flew down to his shoulder. The crow began to whisper important information back to Itachi before dispelling. The rush of information made Itachi stop his tracks in surprise, gaining the attention of his partner. "Hey Itachi, you alright?" asked Kisame. Itachi turned to his partner and nodded. "I apologize, I was simply caught off guard by the news I was given," he replied. "Oh, so even you can be surprised. What was the news about anyway?" asked the former Kiri nin. "Apparently Konoha is gathering resources for war," he coolly lied. "That much was a given if you knew Danzo, but fortunately for Itachi his partner had never met the old warhawk." Very interesting indeed," muttered Kisame. Itachi continued to walk by Kisame's side, but the shark man failed to notice the rare and uncharacteristic grin on his partner's face. "So that's where you're hiding, Naruto-kun. You've done well to hide yourself from the Akatsuki and escape our eyes. I must commend you, but worry not, Naruto-kun, your secret is safe with me," he thought to himself before briefly glancing on the gigantic sword on his partner's back. "I think I may have found a way for me to pay you back for your actions in saving my brother." 1 year later. The past year flew like a breeze to Naruto. Since joining the rebellion he never once slacked off. Every day he and the others would train. The only days they weren't training were whenever they were getting deployed for missions. It took Naruto a while, but after working hard and keeping his head down he managed to fully gain the trust of the others, most especially the ones close to his age. It had only been a year, but in that time, he managed to connect and learn more about his new comrades. From what Naruto learned, Suigetsu was the younger brother of Mangetsu Hazuka, the former wielder of the Haramekure. After the death of his older brother, Suigetsu decided to join to finish off the dream of his brother, the dream to free their country from Yagura's reign. Jugo, on the other hand, was a former Orochimaru experiment. Naruto was shocked to learn that his clan were the ones who held what would be the powers of the curse seal. But Naruto trusted Jugo with this power. He knew that Jugo would never openly harm someone without reason. Chojuro appeared to be an orphan on the verge of dying, but he was saved by Mei, and she brought him here to join the rebellion. As a means of thanking his savior, he chose to join their ranks. Hotaru was like Chojuro. She came from a prominent clan, but they were killed off by the Mizukage. While on the verge of death she was saved by Yu Takata and she joined the rebellion as thanks. Haku was Naruto's first friend among the group since they already had their past. She no longer saw herself as a tool, but she was still extremely loyal to Zabuza. By this time Naruto had managed to befriend and gain the complete trust among these people, but there was one individual who Naruto was still somewhat wary of. He tried his best to connect and get to know Kagura, but he was always quite distant, not just to him but everyone. He could tell that Kagura was a dangerous shinobi, and that he had incredible potential. But his attitude just reminded Naruto too much of his old teammate Sasuke. But Naruto could also sympathize with Kagura. Suigetsu had told him Kagura's story and he could understand why he acted the way he did. It turns out Kagura is the biological grandson of the Mizukage Yagura. Kagura's parents revolted against Yagura and for their betrayal they were executed. Kagura has since then run away from home and vowed to exact revenge on his grandfather. The death of his parents really affected Kagura, and the drive for vengeance made him strong. But despite all that, he and Kagura retained a level of respect for each other. Other than the new connections Naruto made, his training under Zabuza allowed him to progress tremendously. He was trained in taijutsu, shuri kenjutsu, genjutsu defense rather than genjutsu itself, since Naruto found standard genjutsu difficult. The focus of their training, however, remained with kenjutsu and ninjutsu. During their first day of training, Zabuza made Naruto use a piece of chakra paper to determine his elemental affinity. Zabuza was pleased to learn that it was wind, which happened to be his secondary element. He began to teach Naruto some wind techniques, and it was just recently that Zabuza discovered the true usefulness of shadow clones. With the use of shadow clones, they were able to bump Naruto's training up. Not only was Naruto learning wind techniques, but since they were in the land of water, they found it fitting for Naruto to also learn water techniques as well. The second focus of their training was with kenjutsu. Zabuza made it necessary for all ninjas in their ranks to be reasonably skilled with a weapon for the moments when they are low on chakra. All the teenagers chose to wield swords, and this made things so much easier for Zabuza, with him being one of the greatest living kenjutsu experts at this time. During Naruto's off time from Zabuza's training, he usually trained with Utakata. The man, being a fellow Jinchuriki, taught Naruto chakra control, knowing it to be difficult with their incredible amounts of chakra, and he also taught him to control his animalistic tendencies. Other than that, he also helped Naruto with his water elemental techniques, seeing how it was Utakata's affinity. During the off days when Naruto wasn't training with either Utakata or Zabuza, he and his clones would study and work on the scrolls given to him by Jiraiya, before he left Konoha. The scrolls were extremely useful since they contained valuable information regarding seals and barriers. All in all, with his new home, Naruto knew he couldn't remain stagnant, so every opportunity he had to train, he took it. He was now in survival mode. In Kiri it was eat or be eaten, and so Naruto made sure to hone his skills. Konoha. Since Danzo had been appointed Godem Hokage, the village of Konoha has since then gone through drastic changes. Gone now were the beliefs of old, a new Konoha was rising. One of Danzo's first decrees was to lower the genin requirement age from 12 down to 10. He also forced all ex-shinobi to unretire. It was clear that the Hokage was planning something. One wouldn't typically amass soldiers in such a manner for the sake of it. True to the statement, news of a declaration of war from Konoha was soon spreading across the land of fire. Just a week ago, the Hokage had bravely issued a retaliation against the land of wind, and more specifically Sunagakure, for their involvement in the attack from the Chunin exams. Truth be told, many expected this kind of move from Danzo of all people. Suna is the weakest it's ever been. An attack from Konoha wouldn't be unwarranted, and Konoha was significantly stronger than Suna. All factors pointing to only one logical conclusion for the old Warhawk: to conquer and annex Suna for their betrayal. With the loss of one Jinchuriki due to the interference of Tsunade and Jiraiya, this new plan gave Danzo an opportunity to capture another in its place. Although the Ichibi may be the weakest from the 9, it still has enough power to trample and terrorize a village. Danzo wouldn't let an opportunity such as this go to waste, and so once his forces had been gathered, he sent the newly appointed Case Cage a letter of intent. Of course, it wasn't difficult for Danzo's cause to be supported by the public. Many were still grieving from their attack during the Chunin exams, and so tensions were still high, and many of the public demanded punishment be brought down onto Suna for their betrayal. A demand Danzo was more than happy to comply to. As for Team 7, since the banishment of Naruto, the final member of the team was replaced by a rude operative by the name of Sai. Danzo had purposefully placed Sai in Team 7 as a means of keeping an eye on the last loyal Uchiha. The Hokage had high hopes for the Uchiha. With the Uzumaki gone, the person with the highest potential in the village was Sasuke Uchiha. As such, the Warhawk had taken him under his wing, training him and molding the boy in his ideas and teachings. He was proving to be a potential successor for Danzo, and of course Sasuke was more than happy to receive this level of training. Anything for the sake of power. Of course, with Sasuke now being Danzo's apprentice, he was immediately promoted to a Chunin. He, alongside the likes of Shino Aburame, Neji Hyuga, and Rock Lee, were all promoted by the Hokage himself from the latest Chunin exams, this time held in Takigakure. The loss of Naruto had affected Team 7 in a multitude of ways. Sasuke was by far the most positively affected. With the orange-clad ninja gone from his life, his goal to become stronger had been greatly hastened. Sasuke hardly cared at whatever happened to Naruto. For all he cared, Naruto got what he deserved for getting in his way. Kakashi on the other hand sorely missed the energetic young blonde. Team 7 just wasn't the same without him. He just hoped that wherever Naruto was that he was safe and alive. Kakashi was extremely disappointed in Sasuke for his actions against his teammate. It went against everything Kakashi taught them. But unfortunately for Kakashi, he was not able to argue about his team. The Hokage ordered him to lead them and he had no choice but to follow. Then that only left Sakura. She probably took Naruto's exile to heart the most. She didn't attend Naruto's court-martial. She hadn't seen Naruto at all since that fateful day in front of the Konoha gates. She could not muster up the courage needed to face Naruto or even visit him when he was in the hospital. She had only heard of the degree of injuries Naruto sustained trying to keep his promise to her. Deep down she felt that all this was her fault. She regretted not seeing him. To this day she worries if he's safe, or if he's even alive. Nearly all the Konoha 11 other than Sasuke dearly missed Naruto. But the Sasuke retrieval mission and its repercussions left an indelible mark on the young ninjas. Many of which distanced themselves away from Team 7. A large majority of them placed the blame on Sakura for using Naruto's feelings for her, as a result leading to the banishment of their friend. It was only now they began to see Naruto in a different light, and now all his dreams and aspirations were forcibly taken away from him. The only ones who remained on friendly terms with Sakura were Team 10, and it was mostly due to her best friend Ino always vouching for her. She regretted her treatment of Naruto. It was only now she was seeing how important he was to her life. Since he left, Konoha had gotten significantly quieter and livelier. Everything around them felt so gray and dull, especially with Danzo at the helm. Other than Naruto, she was also beginning to worry about her other teammate. The Sasuke that was brought back by Naruto was not the Sasuke she knew. He changed and she was beginning to question her love for him. She wondered sometimes how different things could have been if he left instead and if Naruto stayed. This new Sasuke was a lot more closed off, prone to anger, aggressive, cold and obsessed with power. It scared her to see what he was becoming. For the first time she began to regret her pursuit of the Avenger. Another year later. In that span of time the war for Kiri raged on, but things appeared to be on somewhat of a standstill. Both sides were fighting on even grounds, with neither successfully swinging the tides of war towards their side. For the most part both coalitions seemed to be evenly matched. But the rebellion had plans of changing that. Their spy networks had recently gathered a key piece of information. In the commander tents of the rebel encampment stood Mei, the young and charismatic leader of the rebellion. By her side were her two most trusted advisors, Zabuza and Ao. The three of them stood in front of a table holding a large map of the land of demons. Standing by the map were the soldiers summoned by Mei. There was Naruto, Suigetsu, Chojuro and Haku. The 16-year-old Naruto directed a question to Mei. "Mei-chan, why'd you summon us?" he asked. Chojuro and Suigetsu to this day are still shocked at how casual Naruto was with their leader. Granted, she wasn't that much older than them, she was still the figurehead of the entire rebellion. Mei was a dangerous ninja known far and wide, and she wasn't someone you wanted to piss off. Back in Kirigakure she was heralded as a genius and a prodigy. She held 2 Kekkei Genkai, the lava release and boil release. With her powers she quickly rose through the ranks and even becoming a Jonin by the age of 12. But of course, all that changed once the bloodline purges began to happen. She quickly escaped and rallied people to her cause. Mei chuckled at Naruto's sincerity. "Well, Naruto-kun, I'll have you know that we gathered incredible information that could give us the edge in this war," she replied, causing gasps from the young soldiers. "No way, what could it be, Mei-sama?" stuttered Chojuro. "Our spies have gathered that Yagura has sent 2 of his beloved swordsmen to the land of demons. They plan to kidnap and ransom the holy priestess of the land, thus guaranteeing the support of the land of demons. What I want to do is send a team of soldiers to intercept them and save the priestess. If all goes well, we could instead sway the land of demons to support our cause, and we may be able to retrieve 2 of the 7 swords," she explained. "If you don't mind me asking, Mei-senpai, who are the swordsmen he sent?" asked Suigetsu. "Yagura sent Jinpachi Munashi and Jinin Akabino, meaning we have a chance of securing the Kabutowari and Shibuki respectively." "Sounds like in a walk in the park. So who are you sending with this, Mei-chan?" asked Naruto. "That would be us," answered Zabuza. "Ao and I will serve as the 2 leaders of this operation." We plan to separate into teams of 3 to attack and dispose of the 2 swordsmen. Matin will hold Chojuro and Suigetsu, while Zabuza-san will have Haku and Naruto by his side, Ao added on. A fox-like grin formed on Naruto's lips. He was excited. This gave him the opportunity to test his own skills. He was no longer the same helpless little boy he once was. The war had turned the innocent young man into a hardened killer. Naruto still to this day hated killing, and he would try avoiding it if he could. But the war made him realize that sometimes it was better in the long run to end a life, and so because of that, if it ever came down to it, he wouldn't hesitate. The war had really taken a toll on Naruto. The young man had now seen the true side of war. He had grown accustomed to death, and it hardly bothered him anymore. Of course, all this death and chaos really influenced the teenagers. Naruto began to grow slightly more distant, and he even began to find vices that help him take his mind away from the horrors of war. The young man had taken a fancy to the life of adulthood. The way he saw it: if you old enough to kill, you were old enough to drink, fuck, gamble or smoke. True to that, Naruto had begun to pick up bad habits along the way. Having to witness the deaths of comrades over and over again in a regular basis sometimes drove Naruto to the bottle. He occasionally relieves the stress with a calming smoke or through physical pleasures. It had been a tough few years for the young man. Since joining the rebellion, he had been forced to grow up, and in doing so he was scarred. He needed an escape from the realities of the world, even for just an hour, just enough to keep him sane. Naruto had also grown physically through the years. He was no longer the 13-year-old squirt that arrived in camp a couple years ago. He had hit puberty finally and began to grow a couple feet taller. His frame and strength grew as well due to the intense physical training conducted by Zabuza. Gone was the orange jumpsuit he once wore religiously. Since joining the rebellion, Naruto had been forced to wear darker shades to protect himself from assassins. Now the young man wore a blue long-sleeved shirt. He accompanied it with camo pants and a pair of traditional blue shinobi sandals. Now stood a 16-year-old Naruto. He was no longer a little boy. He had grown up to become a man. "I'm kind of excited. When do we leave?" asked Naruto. "Now," replied Mei. "What do you see, Shion?" Shion's pale lavender eyes stared straight into Naruto's cerulean eyes, her filled with dread. She trembled in fear as she clung onto his shirt. "You're going to die," she stuttered. Naruto's demeanor did not change once upon hearing what she said. The young blonde merely chuckled before taking another drag off his cigarette. "I'm going to die?" he asked. "Sorry, Shion, but that isn't happening." Her expression changed from fear to anger in a matter of seconds. She knew that Naruto was here to protect her, but sometimes she just wanted to kill him herself. He was infuriating. Ever since his mission had started, he'd find ways to press her buttons. But over time she saw another side to Naruto. She saw the side of him that never gave up, the side that cared deeply for his friends, and the side that always fought for justice and righteousness. Despite him being infuriating at times, she knew he was a good man and that she was in safe hands. Naruto on the other didn't fare that much better with the priestess at first. Upon first meeting her, he found her to be quite snobbish, entitled and cowardly, 3 of the qualities Naruto hated the most. But despite their obvious annoyance with one another, as luck would have it, the young blonde was given the added responsibility of becoming Shion's personal bodyguard for the mission. But as time passed between the two, they began to grow less hostile with one another. Shion began to admire Naruto's courage and unwavering determination, while Naruto began to encourage Shion to let loose and have fun. On the other hand, the mission had hit a bit of a fork in the road. True to the intel gathered, the 2 swordsmen were spotted around the temple thanks to various surveillance measures posted by the rebellion. But as it turned out, their recon on the 2 gave away the enemy's plot, and from the sounds of things, this mission was far more important than just gathering 2 swords. Jinin Akabino and Jinpachi Munashi, the 2 swordsmen sent by Yagura, had apparently allied themselves with a cultist medical ninja by the name of Yomi. Their goal being to release the demon known as Morio, and according to the gathered intel, the group was on its way to the temple where Morio was sealed. Naruto and the rest of the group mutually agreed under no circumstances can they release Morio, and so the 2 groups along with Shion were in the hunt for the 3 of them. Naruto was placed in a group led by Zabuza, and with them was Haku and by default Shion. They were tasked with taking down Jinin Akabino, the wielder of the Kabutowari. The group was led by Ao, and he was accompanied by 2 of Naruto's closest friends in the rebellion, Suigetsu and Chojuro. Their mission was to take down Jinpachi Munashi, the wielder of the Shibuki. But the main priority of this mission was Yomi, but they knew that to get to him they first had to go through the two swordsmen. Today was the day before the big battle. The Kiri revolutionaries all camped inside the temple where Morio was sealed. They wouldn't let them past them to get to Morio. Today the group focused on resting to gather their strength, and to form strategies for the ensuing fight. Zabuza, having been a former colleague of theirs and fighting on their side for many years, had made the necessary tactics to maximize their odds of winning. Later during the night, watches were placed in shifts. At this moment Naruto oversaw the watch while the others were asleep in their tents. Naruto sat by the temple ledges on lookout. He had 2 hours in his shift until Suigetsu would wake. He was brought out of his musings once he heard a voice call to him. "You look like you need a bit of company." Naruto turned around and saw Shion. "What are you doing up this late?" "You can catch a cold at this hour," he replied. "I just couldn't sleep, I guess, and then I saw you standing watch and I decided I might as well keep you company," replied the priestess. Naruto chuckled softly before moving over in his seat to give her some room. She gladly sat by his side as they stared out into the night sky. "Thanks," he muttered softly as Shion briefly glanced back at the boy. "It was getting a bit boring out here myself, and I guess I could do with a bit of company." A few minutes passed as the two sat in silence. Both Naruto and Shion were far too entranced into the night sky. Stars were shining, and the full moon stood brightly. "I never got to say thank you," said Shion as she caught the attention of Naruto. His piercing blue eyes stared straight into her own, and it was only then she realized how much of a deep shade of blue they were. Her face reddened slightly enough for Naruto to notice. Naruto chuckled to himself as he saw the state of Shion. He wasn't as dense as he used to be. He knew that Shion was flustered and he decided to tease her a little bit. "What brought this out suddenly?" "I'm just doing my job, Shion-chan," he teased, causing the priestess' blush to grow deeper. "Shut up, Baka," she stuttered in response. Unknown to many of the revolutionaries, Naruto had an ongoing fling with Hotaru. The two kept it on the down low. There were never any feelings involved when it came to Naruto. He wasn't one to settle down. He had too many things to worry about, and a relationship would just distract him at this point. That, and he didn't want to drag other people into his own mess. He had a massive target in his back, and he guessed it would also carry over to his family if he were to have any. "You know I have no intentions of dying tomorrow," he sighed. Shion's eyes widened in shock. "You know my visions are never wrong. Why do you keep on insisting on seeing this mission through? You don't have to die, just run away or call for reinforcements to replace you or something," she exclaimed. "I can't and I won't. I wouldn't put the lives of other people in danger just to save my own hide. I didn't become a ninja to let other people fight my battles for me," he replied. A few stray tears cascaded down Shion's cheeks. "You're a good man, Naruto. Thank you for risking your life for me and for my land. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I never deserved to be protected by you," she said as her body trembled in fear and sadness. Naruto placed one of his hands on hers to stop her trembling. "Don't say such foolish things. You're a good person, Shion, the right kind of person to lead your land. And like I said earlier, I can promise you I won't die," he said in a confident tone. Shion was left speechless. Her body burned up at the touch of his hands and her mind was reeling at his words. She knew herself that she was never wrong when it came to her predictions, but the way Naruto spoke, it had almost convinced her that maybe what she saw was a mistake. Never had she seen such confidence in a person. Naruto believed he wouldn't die, and for some strange reason or another, Shion began to believe it too. The priestess began to laugh softly as she scooted closer to Naruto. She placed her head on his shoulders, never letting go of his hand. "Well then you better promise me you come back. I won't forgive you if you prove me right," she muttered softly. Naruto's hand gently squeezed hers. "Don't worry, I never break my promises," he replied as thoughts of his old team surfaced in Naruto's mind. His promise of a lifetime, if anything it felt like a lifetime ago when that happened. The following day. "Hey Naruto, Shion wake you too." Naruto's eyes fluttered open as he saw his friend Chojuro standing in front of them inside his tent. "What's going on, Chojuro?" he asked. "They've been detected. Our targets are meant to be here in an hour according to our intel. So, get ready. We have breakfast ready, so eat up," he said before leaving the tent. Naruto yawned loudly before wiping his eyes. He glanced to his left to see Shion. The priestess had decided to sleep in Naruto's tent from the night before just after their heartfelt moment during his shift of the watch. Of course, nothing had happened, but he allowed her to stay with him if it made her feel safer and if it gave her comfort. The young blonde began to shake the priestess lightly as she woke from her slumber. Another blush was seen on her face as she began to understand where she was. Memories of last night flashed before her, and even though nothing had happened between them, it was still the most romantic moment of her life. Being a priestess, she was shielded away from romance, focusing directly on her duties as a priestess. But then this random boy from the Kiri revolution came around, and now things weren't as straightforward as it used to be for her. "Hey Shion-chan, wake up, we need to get ready, apparently they'll be here in an hour," he said as Shion was removed from her flustered state. "I see, in that case we'll be ready," she said before grabbing his hand. "Remember your promise to me." A small smile graced Naruto's face at the heartfelt moment between him and the priestess. He never expected them to be as close as they were, seeing how they practically hated each other during their first meeting. But here they were now. Naruto could see that she began to care for him, and even he had to admit he began to take a liking to the girl. Feeling a bit adventurous today, he slowly leaned in, capturing her lips with his own. Shion's eyes widened in shock as her body froze. She didn't expect something like this from him. It took her a moment, but once she regained her composure, she began to reciprocate the kiss. The two stayed locked in their kiss for a few seconds before Naruto drew back. "Don't worry Shion-chan, I'll come back alive," he reassured. The priestess smiled back at the young blonde before leaning over to give him a big hug. She stayed in that position for a couple minutes, not wanting to let go. 1 hour later, Naruto stood in front of the temple's northern entrance, his hand directly on his sheathed katana. By his side stood Zabuza and Haku, and behind them in a safe distance stood Shion. The group was waiting for the arrival of their opponents. The second group, led by Ao and accompanied by Chojuro and Suigetsu, were stationed in the southern entrance. According to reports, Jinpachi Munashi was going to infiltrate through the south entrance, and as such the group led by Ao would be the ones to counter his attack. Meanwhile, Naruto and his team were waiting for Jin and Akabino to arrive with Yomi in tow. The young Naruto was unwavering in the face of danger. His sensory skills could feel the approaching enemy step by step as he inched closer to their location. And just like that, the four of them saw a silhouette in the distance. The enemy was far away, but the four of them knew exactly who it was. The man stood back, staring straight into the temple. From the looks of things, he seemed to know that they would be here to defend it. In a matter of seconds, the enemy ninja sprinted towards temple. Jinin ran with the kabutowari in hand, ready to deliver a devastating opening blow to his opponents. The group led by Zabuza were also alerted once they heard explosions going off into the distance. "TCH, it seems Jinpachi just got here as well," Zabuza muttered to himself before turning his direction back to his old companion Jinin. "It's been a long time, Jinin." "Been far too long, Zabuza. Now show me what you got," he replied before jumping up into the air. He was about to deliver a powerful jumping attack to where Zabuza stood. But Zabuza jumped away in time. Instead of Zabuza, Jinin's sword connected with the group and it left a crater in its attack. "Watch out you two, the kabutowari if used properly can deliver powerful attacks. It relies on brute strength, and trust me, Jinin has brute strength," he said as he glided through the air. A small grin was seen on the enemy's face. "You give me too much praise, Zabuza," he said before lifting his sword from the ground. There was dust all over the area where Jinin stood. His attack had really left a mark in the ground. Through the large dust cloud emerged another figure. Up into the sky, the group was distracted by the sight of Yomi jumping into the air. Zabuza's eyes widened when he realized that Jinin was meant to be a distraction. He was about to jump after Yomi and chase him, but while he was distracted, he failed to see Jinin appear just by his side. When did he get so fast? He thought to himself in distress. Jinin then delivered a powerful attack with the hammer side of his kabutowari straight into Zabuza's torso. He was sent flying into the air, effectively knocked out by that one hit. "Zabuza-sama," yelled Haku. "Don't worry brat, he's not dead. I know Zabuza and he won't die from just one attack. Man, he's gotten weaker since I last saw him. If he had his old sword with him, he may have stood a chance," explained Jinin. Naruto's grip on his katana tightened upon seeing Zabuza get defeated in one hit. This wasn't looking good for him, but it was not the time to start panicking. The young blonde steeled himself before turning to face his colleague, Haku. Haku, go after Yomi. Let me hand this guy, he ordered as he brought her out of her state of shock. But Naruto he defeated. But nothing Haku, just do as I said and trust me, he exclaimed before turning to face Haku. The ice user's eyes widened in shock as she saw the look of excitement in Naruto's face. She could see a large array of emotions running through the boy's face. There was excitement, a little bit of fear, but not a single trace of doubt. Just trust me Haku, there's no way in hell I'm going to lose to this guy. Haku sighed before nodding at Naruto. Very well, I trust you Naruto-kun, she said before jumping away to chase after Yomi. Now Naruto was left to fight Jinin, one-on-one. The swordsman began to laugh as he watched Naruto's interaction with his teammate. It was completely and utterly laughable to him that a complete nobody like Naruto believes he had a shot of winning against him. You're a ballsy little kid, aren't you? He said before releasing a large amount of ki into the air. You better say your prayers, brat, since I don't take too kindly to insults, he said before jumping towards Naruto about to deliver another attack. The young blonde saw this coming and jumped back a few meters as he weaved through hand seals. Water release. Water fang bullet, he yelled as he sent compact projectiles of water hurling towards his opponent. Jinin used his sword and with its axe side simply sliced through the large body of water. You're going to have to do better than that to beat me, brat, he yelled. Tch, damn, this guy is strong, he muttered softly before quickly going through yet another string of hand signs. Water release. Water dragon bullet technique. A large water dragon emerged from the nearby bodies of water and was sent flying straight to his opponent. Jinin grinned manically as he watched the jutsu come hurling towards him. Not bad kid, but not good enough, he said as he weaved through his own seals. Earth release. Earth-style wall, he yelled as a large wall of earth sprung forth from the ground to shield him from Naruto's attack. Now it's my turn. Earth release. Earth flow spears. Spikes began to shoot up from the ground. Naruto managed to jump back just in time, but he didn't have much room to breathe since as soon as he jumped back Jinin appeared directly in front of him ready to strike. He swung his sword down on Naruto, but thankfully the young blonde managed to unsheath his katana just in time to block the combined attack of the Kabutowary's axe and hammer. The blonde was lucky to have placed wind chakra on his sword because had he not then his katana would have been destroyed in an instant, and he would have had his head split open. But despite Naruto narrowly escaping death, the force of the attack did leave a significant amount of damage on the young man. He was sent flying down to the ground unceremoniously. Naruto braced himself for impact and he was left winded and bruised at the powerful attack. He coughed out a bit of blood before gingerly standing back up. He could hear a familiar voice in the distance cheering him on. He grabbed a hold of his katana and he knew he couldn't afford to lose. Don't you dare die Naruto, Shion yelled in the distance. Jinin began to grow annoyed at the cheerleader standing by the sides. He decided it was best to get rid of her while the boy was recovering. He quickly ran towards the priestess. He watched in delight as her eyes widened in shock and her body trembled in fear. He appeared before her in a matter of seconds and he towered over the priestess ready to deliver a killing blow to the defenseless girl. Naruto saw this and grit his teeth. He dug into his resolve and sprinted as fast as he can to the priestess. He arrived just in time to push her away and in return he blocked the Kabutowary's attack with his katana once more. Naruto was left in a battle of strength with Jinin. His katana was only holding back from the raw power of the Kabutowary. Leave her out of this you bastard, your fight is with me, he said before kicking Jinin by the midsection giving Naruto the best chance to escape that unfavorable position. He quickly grabbed Shion and jumped back to a safe distance. Sorry about that, I'll try not to make you worry, he said to Shion as he held her in his arms. Once they were in a safe distance, he let go of Shion and made sure she hid somewhere where she would be safe. Jinin was still recovering from the kick delivered to his solar plexus and this gave Naruto the perfect opportunity to strike. Naruto summoned a single shadow clone and the two of them completed two separate sets of hand seals. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Wind Release. Gale Palm. The two techniques were used in cooperation of each other. An incredible amount of shuriken was summoned by Naruto and the strength of the projectiles was further enhanced by the wind jutsu. The swordsman was beginning to feel annoyed at the boy. He grabbed his sword and he swung the hammer down onto the ground to effectively creating a large wall of earth to shield him. He didn't have time to go through the seals, so improvising on the spot would do. "Prepare to get your ass kicked, you jerk," yelled Naruto as he followed up with another attack. Water release. Water colliding wave. He began to create a large spiraling vortex of water and he immediately sent it to attack his opponent. Jinnen was surprised to see such a powerful jutsu from his opponent, serves him right for undermining him from the get-go. It seems that the loudmouth blonde had a bit more tricks up his sleeve than he initially thought. "Two can play at this game, brat," he yelled as he summoned his own water vortex. "You aren't fighting just an ordinary Jonengaki. You're fighting one of the 7 swordsmen, so prepare to die." Water release. Water colliding wave. The two vortexes collided violently. The area was drenched in water, but both Naruto and Jinnen managed to keep their footing despite the large force of water trying to blow them away. Neither one of the fighters wanted to give an inch in this battle. Jinnen immediately took on the offensive the second the water began to disperse. Earth release. Earth dragon bullet, he yelled as a large mud dragon sprang forth from the ground and flew towards the blonde ninja. Naruto stood his ground. Wind release. Vacuum great sphere, he yelled as he blew out a large sphere of compressed air towards the dragon. The two jutsus ended up negating each other, and during the middle of the attack, Naruto sprung forth on the offensive. The blonde exhaled wind chakra onto his blade, once again using the wind release. Vacuum blade to strengthen and sharpen his katana. He instantaneously appeared in front of Jinnen, catching the man by surprise. The man jumped back upon seeing Naruto. The blonde on the other hand plunged his sword towards Jinnen's heart, but the man was able to narrowly dodge the killing blow. But luckily for Naruto, his strike managed to land on his left shoulder. Jinnen winced in pain as he nursed his bloodied shoulder. "Fuck, that stings. You'll pay for that, Gaki," he yelled as he sprinted towards Naruto. He swung his axe towards the blonde. Naruto managed to block it just in time, but the Kabutowari's hammer end connected with the axe, adding a powerful force to the swing. For the second time this fight, Naruto was unable to hold his ground from the devastating attack and he was sent flying like how Zabuza was a few minutes ago. "TCH, that should keep his ass down. Now where the hell is that priestess?" he muttered to himself. Jinnen briefly closed his eyes and began to search for Shion's chakra signature. He later found her hiding somewhere within the temple. But just before he could walk inside the temple, he heard a raspy voice scream from afar. "I told you that your fight is with me, and as long as I breathe, I won't let you harm Shion," Naruto yelled in the distance as he prepared as a large amount of water began to gather by the blonde. Shion watched from afar in awe of the fight. She felt utterly helpless in this situation. Naruto was out there fighting and risking his life as she sat there only to be protected by her fellow blonde. She wanted nothing more but to help Naruto, but she knew that she would only hinder him. He needed to fight him without having to worry about anything or anyone else. Water release. Great waterfall technique. Naruto expelled an incredible amount of water in the shape of a waterfall down onto Jinnen. The man's eyes widened as he braced himself for the incoming attack. The large water jutsu connected and Jinnen had to use all his strength and an incredible amount of chakra on his feet to keep himself from getting washed away by the powerful force of the water. The attack left Jinnen heaving and soaked in a mixture of blood and water, and yet he continued to stand strong in front of his opponent. Then in front of him jumped Naruto, but the blonde was too slow. Jinnen managed to impale him with the Kabutowari. Shion watched in fear as Naruto was impaled by the sword. "Naruto!" she yelled in distress as tears fell from her face. This was the exact scene her vision foretold, and despite all of Naruto's promises it appeared that her vision had come to fruition. She dropped down to her knees as she screamed in agony, tears cascading down her face. "You promised me you wouldn't die," cried the priestess. "I got you, no brat, say your prayers," Jinnen said with venom. But before he could finish Naruto off, he saw a small smirk on the boy's face. Before the swordsman could react, Naruto exploded, and he was blasted away to a safe distance. Clone great explosion? He thought to himself. He must have used it immediately after his water jutsu. "I won't die so easily, but you've been a tough opponent for me, Jinnen Akabino. I can respect a warrior such as yourself, but now it's time for me to give you a warrior's death," yelled Naruto. Shion's eyes widened in shock upon realization that her vision was proven false. She quickly got back to her feet as she wiped her tears away. As the smoke dispelled, her eyes landed immediately on the blonde who stood a good few meters away from the swordsman. He's alive. Thanks Kami, she thought to herself. Prepare to die, yelled Naruto as he summoned a thick fog to consume the area. Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. Surely you can't expect to defeat me with this technique. This is the famed jutsu of the 7 swordsmen, this is our jutsu. No one knows this jutsu more than us, he taunted. That's where you're wrong Jinin, you may be able to detect me, but you won't have enough time to react to my attack, replied the blonde. Naruto stood a few meters away with 2 shadow clones behind him, and his wind-enhanced sword by his hand. His 2 clones weaved through hand seals. Wind release. Gale palm. They yelled before expelling an incredibly strong gust from their hands. Immediately as soon as the jutsu was completed, Naruto jumped up towards his clone's hands to accelerate his movements to an incredible rate. Naruto stream, he yelled as he appeared in front of Jinin within a second, and in that window of opportunity he pierced his katana straight through the man's heart. Jinin's eyes widened in shock. When did he get here? He asked himself. But it was too late, he felt the blade go through his body, and the man spat out blood. I'm going to die, he thought to himself before staring straight into the cold blue eyes of his killer. What's your name? He asked in a very raspy and haggard voice. Naruto Uzumaki. I'll remember that, he replied before dropping unceremoniously on the ground. Naruto's hand reached out for the blade embedded into his opponent's lifeless form. He picked it up and wiped away the blood before sheathing it back. He then walked over to the Kabutoari laying on the ground. A large smile appeared on the young man's face as he grabbed the sword. Naruto quickly sealed it up into one of his storage scrolls before summoning a shadow clone. Go grab Zabuza and carry him over, he's going to be knocked out for a while. The original Naruto walked back over to the temple and there he saw Shion standing there with an unreadable expression on her face. Hey, look, I guess I'm still alive, he joked. Shion stormed over to Naruto with an evident rage. As soon as she got face to face with the blonde, she delivered a loud and powerful slap straight to his cheek. Naruto was left dazed and confused by the resounding slap. His hand quickly reached up to his cheek to nurse it. Shion immediately pushed his hand away, grabbed his face and crashed her lips against his. The two soon separated from their lip lock, their eyes still staring straight into each other's. A wide grin formed on Naruto's face as the two held each other closely. As much as I would love to stay in the position we're in, we had to go look for the others, he said. Shion realized the position they were in and quickly took a step back. She was clearly flustered as seen on her reddened face. Naruto then grabbed her and carried her bridal style before running to meet with the rest of his team. Naruto ran quickly over to the middle of the temple where Morio was sealed. So far, he had yet to hear further explosions and he hadn't felt any dark chakra, so he was confident that his team had been successful. As he ran closer to the designated area, a smile grew on Naruto's face as he gazed upon a few familiar faces. There stood the rest of his team, all bloodied and injured but alive, nonetheless. Hey guys, I'm glad you're alright, he said as he approached the group. Suigetsu had a smug grin on his face as he watched Naruto run towards them. He looked far worse for wear than the rest of them. You look like shit, he said. Naruto chuckled softly. Well, you should see the other guy, he replied as he let Shion and Zabuza down. The rest of the group noticed Zabuza's unconscious floor laying on the ground. The ninjas walked over to inspect the man. Is he alright? He seems to be breathing, that's good, mentioned Haku as she checked her master's pulse. Naruto nodded in return. Yeah, he should be safe, he got knocked out by the guy's surprise attack. I'm sure when he comes to, he wouldn't be quite pleased. Personally, I'll never let him hear the end of it, he said in a humorous tone. Did you have to take on Jinin Senpai all on your own? I know Haku-san was busy fighting Yomi, stuttered Chojuro. Yeah, it was a tough battle, that guy was the real deal. But thankfully I won in the end, and I got his sword, replied the blonde as he handed over the storage scroll to Ao. Ao gladly took the scroll and nodded gratefully to Naruto. Well done Naruto-san. I must say I had some inhibitions about you, but you're quickly proving me wrong, he replied, causing a surprised reaction from the embarrassed blonde. So how was your fight? Asked the blonde. While it was difficult, as presumed Jinpachi proved to be a formidable opponent. But he proved to be no match for our combined efforts, and as a result we managed to retrieve the Shibuki as well. This day has turned out to be quite fruitful for our cause. We took out 2 of the swordsmen, acquired their swords, accomplished our mission, with no casualties, answered Ao. Shion then spoke, gathering the attention of the ninjas. While I for one am grateful for all your services, you've all risked your lives for me and in return my country, and I will support your cause without hesitation, she said as the ninjas all smiled proudly at their accomplishment. Now we must return to the palace. We will offer you food and shelter there until you all recover. We will also celebrate your successful mission, the priestess added on. Later that night, the group of ninjas sat by the dining room and in front of them was banquet of food. In the side they were also served some of the finest wine and sake. Of course, the ninjas took advantage of this and for the rest of the night they feasted, drank and shared stories amongst one another. Of course, there was a hearty banter shared amongst the boys of the rebellion. Of course, the main culprits being Naruto, Suigetsu and Zabuza. The latter was on the receiving end of a few mocking remarks about how he fared during his fight. If I had my Kabikirabocho before my injuries it would have been a completely different story, he would always say in return. The entire group enjoyed their banquet, and with them were Shion and her fellow priests. Priests were quite surprised and somewhat disgusted at the barbaric way the men behaved. But then again, they couldn't complain seeing how they practically saved their kingdom. Shion on the other found the group to be lively and quite funny. It was rare to have such a spirited dinner in the temple. Eventually the group's laughter died down as the night closed in. The ninjas were exhausted after their fights today and it was nearing time for them to rest and recover. But in the dying moments of the dinner, Shion popped a question which silenced everyone in the table, leaving them speechless. So how about it, Naruto? My powers need to be passed down onto the next priestess. Do you want to help me, Naruto? She asked. Ao dropped the chopsticks in his hands, realizing the implications of what Shion had just said. Around the table all the priests were dead silent, unable to mutter a single word of protest or approval. Haku continued eating her food as she chuckled softly at the scene in front of her. By her side Zabuza sat turning his head from Naruto to Shion. Chojuro blushed up a storm, and Suigetsu was writhing in a mixture of agony and jealousy. Damn it, Naruto, first Hotaru and now this. I've been hitting on Hotaru for months and all I ever get is a slap to the face. How the hell did you seduce the priestess, you lucky bastard? He yelled in distress. Naruto continued staring at Shion's face during the entire encounter. He chuckled as he admired the amused look on her face. He shrugged in response as he replied nonchalantly, "Yeah, sure," with Naruto. After the dinner had finished, Naruto had followed Shion to her personal room within the temple. He knew exactly what was going to go down, but inside he had a few inhibitions. He knew Shion was infatuated with him, and to be fair he was as well with her. But a part of him knew that they couldn't have a proper relationship. He wasn't one to settle down. The two blondes sat by the edge of the priestess bed. There was an awkward silence hanging above them, and before anything else Naruto engulfed both her hands with his. He stared straight into her eyes and he could see just how flustered she was becoming at how quick everything was. "Shion-chan, before anything happens, we need to have a talk, about this and about us," he said. The priestess was too flustered to respond, so instead, not trusting her voice, she nodded instead. Naruto continued holding her hand as he breathed out a long sigh. "Shion-chan, I really like you. You're a beautiful and amazing girl, but I just don't think I can give you what you want. I know you want a relationship, but I'm just not that kind of guy. At least not now, and probably not for a very long time. I know I promised I wouldn't die, but in my line of work death is something you can expect, and I wouldn't want you to continue worrying about me every day of your life," he said as tears began to cascade down Shion's cheeks. The priestess removed her hands from Naruto's grasp and used it to caress his cheek. "I know about all that, and I don't care," she replied. "But you should, and to be completely honest with you, Shion-chan, I don't know if I can ever reciprocate your feelings to me fully. You deserve someone that will love you, but I can't be that guy." Shion's eyes widened as she realized what he meant. "You're still in love with another girl, aren't you?" she asked. Naruto nodded meekly. "Yeah, I am. But unfortunately, she will never return my feelings. Hell, I don't know if I'll ever get to see her again anyway," he said in a melancholic tone. "Why can't you just move on?" she asked. I honestly don't know, there's been times where I could just fully move on with someone else, but every time that happens a part of me can't. I don't know what it is, I can't get her out of my stupid head. What was she like? The blonde ninja chuckled mirthlessly. Well, she was my teammate a long time ago, and she was one of a kind for sure. She was smart, strong, and under her tough exterior she was kind. But I know it'll never happen, she's in love with my other teammate. Besides, they're both in Konoha, and I'm here as a Kiri ninja now, he answered. You were from Konoha? Yeah, it's a long story. One I'd rather not revisit, sorry. Shion nodded in understanding. Don't worry, I understand, Naruto-kun, she said before capturing his lips with her own. But remember, despite all that, let me tell you one thing, you deserve happiness, Naruto-kun. Even if it isn't with her or with me, you still deserve to be happy, and don't ever forget that. He smiled as he captured her in a tight hug. Thank you, Shion-chan, I really mean that, he said. I want you to promise me. Promise you what? Asked Naruto. I want you to promise me that you'll be happy one day. He chuckled in response. You know I can't break promises. Alright, I'll promise you, Shion-chan, he replied. The priestess caressed his whiskered cheeks one more time. I want to be with you, Naruto-kun, but I know that probably won't happen. But while you're here, please let me be loved by you, she pleaded. Naruto kissed Shion passionately, and throughout the night the two made love to each other. It was intense being the priestess' first time, but Naruto was gentle to her. He turned her into a woman, but during the entire experience he catered to her since it was a special moment for Shion. Inside he felt a bit guilty, he knew he couldn't control his feelings. He wanted to give the priestess all the love and affection she deserved, but he knew he couldn't love her when he obviously yearned for another. In a way he felt strongly for her, but it couldn't equally reciprocate her feelings. This scenario has happened in the past for Naruto. He's had women in his life come and go. He tried to love them, but he knew he couldn't love them the way they deserved. At first it was Hotaru, one of his closest friends in the rebellion. The two had gotten close as friends initially, but eventually she caught feelings for her fellow blonde. Naruto tried his best to reciprocate his feelings for her, but it just wasn't there for him. Like Shion, he felt strong emotions for her, but they just weren't enough. Instead, the two opted for a stable relationship as friends with benefits. The war had forced the group of teenagers to grow up quicker than most, and it was during these times of trial Naruto and Hotaru would find each other for physical comfort. Second was Shizuka. She was a warrior princess Naruto had come across by the forestation surrounding Nadeshiko village, the village of women. The two had fought a fierce battle with Naruto barely winning in the end, and eventually their rivalry blossomed to friendship, which later evolved into physical attraction. Thankfully for Naruto, Shizuka's motive wasn't purely emotional either. She was coping with the loss of her past lover, and she and Naruto had used to each other to try and forget about their losses. Now there was Shion. She was special to Naruto, and in a different world he could have seen himself settling down with her. So, for her first, he made sure to be as gentle and loving as possible. The night was magical for the two. The haze of lust and affection clouded the two blondes for the next few hours, and the following nights before Naruto's departure. With Yagura, the Mizukage sat by his office fuming at the news he had just received. He hadn't heard from his two swordsmen in quite some time, so he sent Anbu to try and locate them. Instead of finding them successful in their mission, the Anbu operatives found 3 burial sites by Moryo's temple, and it didn't take a genius to figure out that it was their grave. Yagura was left in a dilemma. He had just lost 2 of the famed 7 swords, and worse of all, they went to his main enemy. He knew that with each passing the rebellion was slowly getting stronger, and now they were posing a bigger threat than ever. All Kiri had left was the Nuabari, since the rebellion held 5 of the swords, and Kisame was a missing nin, and with him was the Samahata. The Mizukage was brought out of his musings when he heard a soft knock on the door of his office. "Come in," he ordered, and as soon as the door opened a tall and lanky man walked in. The man had long and shaggy hair, and his face was covered by a white porcelain Anbu mask. "You asked for me, Mizukage-sama?" asked the man. The Mizukage nodded. "Hi Kushimaru. Things have not turned out as I planned, and now the rebellion have made a tremendous leap in acquiring the Kabutowari and the Shibuki. Not to mention killing both Jinpachi and Jinin. You're the last remaining swordsman loyal to Kiri, and because of your special skill set I'll need you to do something for me," he explained. "What do you need, Mizukage-sama?" To deal with the rebellion, I believe you need to hit them where it hurts. You're a master assassin Kushimaru, and for that you were given the Nuabari. With that sword and your skill set, I want you to go and assassinate Mei Terumi. She's the leader of the rebellion. Young as she may be, she's proven to be a natural leader rallying the rebellion. Kushimaru nodded in understanding. It shall be done, Mizuka Dama, he replied as he bowed down in respect to his cage. With Mei, she was sitting in a dainty old roadside tavern. There were a few people partaking in all the merriment, but the woman was busy speaking to the hooded man sitting just behind her seat. The two had their backs opposite of one another to try and evade any suspicions. So, what have you heard so far? Asked the auburn-haired woman. Well, according to my sources, two big things are happening, and it involves the two final swords you and your rebellion seeks, replied the man. Mei's eyes widened in shock before composing herself a few seconds later. What's the news then? She asked. First involves the Nuabari, according to my sources within the Mizukage's tower in Kirigakure. Yagura has sent Kushimaru Kurarare to tail you from a distance and assassinate you. Yagura believes that by disposing of you, the leader, it will send the rebellion into a disarray. A small smile graced the beauty's lips. Well, if they want to kill me, they're going to have to send someone a lot stronger. I can use this information to lure him out into an ambush, and then the Nuabari will be ours, she muttered in excitement. The second piece of news involves the Samahata. My spies have informed me that Kisame Hoshigaki is seen traveling alongside Itachi Uchiha around the Kusagakure area. Rumors state that they're in search of Orochimaru's hideout along the area, and from what I've heard, it's not meant to be a friendly visit. Also, Akatsuki planned to attack Orochimaru's hideout. Do you know what the motive is? According to my sources, the snake has a fair amount of research going on down by his hideout. My guess is that Kisame and Itachi are there to try and seize the research for their faction, the Akatsuki. Mei nodded in understanding. I see. If that's the case, I could send a squad to ambush them when they're at their weakest. It'll be risky knowing how strong those two are, but if we want to win this war, we'll need the help of the Seven Swords. Kisame was always the individual the rebellion had feared the most other than Yagura, and now it looks like it was time for them to hunt the shark. Is there anything else you wish to reveal? Asked Mei. There is one final thing. It is unfortunate news, but from what I've heard, Konoha has recently staged an attack on Sanagakure. It appears to be revenge on Suna for attacking Konoha a few years ago. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but Konoha was successful in their attack within a few days. Suna was at the weakest it's ever been, and it couldn't offer up much resistance. In the end, the village was annexed by Konoha. The current Kage Gaara no Subaku was removed from his position. Danzo Shimura, the Godem Hokage, chose an ambassador to serve as the village's leader, and he chose his star pupil and apprentice, Sasuke Uchiha. From the looks of things, the old hawk is already planning ahead and preparing his successor. That certainly is bad news. Naruto-kun wouldn't like to hear this news when he returns, she said. Well, that's basically all I had to say. I'm going to stand up and walk out. Remember to stay behind at least 10 minutes after me. I don't want any unwanted attention towards us. We have to act like we don't know each other, he ordered. Hi, I know, don't worry. Before I leave, please make sure to send my regards to Naruto-kun, said the informant as he stood up and slowly made his way to leave the bar. Mei stayed there sitting by her stool in the tavern. In front of her was a bottle of sake. She decided to indulge herself a little bit as she thought about everything that's happened these past few years. Naruto joining the rebellion was one of the biggest events in these past few years. Other than Naruto's skills in the battlefield, he managed to contribute in ways the entire rebellion couldn't believe. They found it unimaginable how a young teenage boy had managed to gain them so much support from other lands. Since Naruto was a good friend of both Tazuna and Koyuki Kazuhana, both village leaders chose to support the rebellion. Tazuna led the Land of Waves, and they formed houses and shelter for the rebellion, and they also sent food and funds to the war effort in secret. Koyuki, on the other hand, was the daimyo of the Land of Snow, and she supported the rebellion also by funding them, but with their technology they formed weapons to be used by the rebellion's ninjas. Both leaders owed Naruto their life, and this was their own way of showing their gratitude to the courageous blonde. But despite the important roles of both Tazuna and Koyuki, the greatest thing Naruto brought with him when he joined was the legendary Jiraiya's spy network. Before facing off the ninjas chasing after his godson, Jiraiya made sure to give Naruto a small notebook detailing his entire spy network, and as a result the spy network is now ran by the blonde. When he felt more comfortable in the rebellion, he chose to trust two of the higher-ups in the chain of command. He felt that it would be safe to tell them. Naruto had chosen to inform Mei and Zabuza. Other than those two, no one else knows about the spy network. With the blonde away in missions, Mei and Zabuza would use the spy network to find out rumors and intercept plans. And luckily the spies were more than willing to cooperate with Naruto and his new comrades. It was especially pleasing when it showed just how deep and resourceful Jiraiya's spy network was. The spies and informants all varied. Some were simple tavern owners, others were maids, and some were even high-up politicians and council members in certain villages. Thankfully one of them being Kiri. Mei smiled contentedly herself. That energetic blonde had really changed the course of the rebellion without even lifting a kunai. Just the mere presence of the blonde had given the rebellion sponsorships and a consistent wealth of information regarding their enemies. She was truly glad to allow him to join, and she had him to thank for many of the rebellion's strides. In fact, the auburn-haired beauty had licked her lips thinking about the blonde hero. "You continue to impress me, Naruto-kun," she thought to herself. With Shion, the priestess had tears sliding down her cheeks as she stood in front of her blonde lover, the man that had turned her into a woman. It was finally the day he was meant to leave. His team was now fully recovered, and they were being sent back by their leader as soon as possible. "I'm going to miss you," she said. Naruto smiled as he used his thumbs to brush away her tears. "I'll definitely miss you too, Shion-chan," he said before grabbing her chin and leaning over for one final kiss. After a few seconds the two separated and Naruto began to walk away with the rest of his group. In the distance he raised his hand. "Goodbye, Shion-chan," he yelled. The priestess smiled softly as she watched her blonde love leave. It was a bittersweet moment for Shion. Just earlier that day she experienced a vision, and in it she saw another vision of Naruto, a noticeably older version of the blonde. In the vision he fulfilled his promise to her. He was happy but with another woman. It made Shion smile. A heartbroken feeling swelled up in her chest at the knowledge that Naruto will never be with her, but she was happy that he would be happy in the future. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.